Have you ever loved someone who hurt you the most? You knew they were wrong for you. You knew you deserved better. And yet, some part of you still held on, still hoped, still remembered. It's a feeling that's hard to explain. Like your heart is fighting a war your mind has already surrendered. Carl Jung believed that these painful attachments are not accidents. They are signals, urgent messages from the deepest parts of your unconscious. And by the end of this video, you'll finally understand why you keep loving the wrong people, and how this invisible war inside you can finally come to an end. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." When you keep falling for people who hurt you, it's not bad luck. It's not weakness. It's your unconscious mind begging for healing. Deep beneath your conscious choices, beneath logic, beneath reason, your unhealed wounds are quietly pulling the strings. You are not drawn to the wrong people by mistake. You are drawn to them because they mirror back the parts of you that still ache, that still believe you are not enough, that still crave love from places where it was once denied. Today, we will walk deep into the real battlefield, not between you and the world, but between the pieces of you that long for healing and the parts that fear it. The echo of abandonment. Why you chase what hurts. You meet someone, and for a moment, it feels like the world finally makes sense. Their voice soothes something raw inside you. Their attention feels like sunlight after a long, cold winter. Every glance they give you feels charged with possibility. Every conversation, a thread stitching itself into the fabric of your life. But somewhere along the way, the warmth starts to fade. Their texts grow colder. Their smiles don't quite reach their eyes anymore. You tell yourself it's just stress, just a bad week, just temporary. So you try harder. You love more fiercely. You give more of yourself, thinking maybe, just maybe, you can bring back the magic. You wait for their messages with a silent desperation. You analyze their words for hidden meanings. You replay every memory, searching for the moment it all began to slip away. You blame yourself for being too much or not enough. You wonder if loving harder will fix what's breaking, even as your heart whispers that it's already broken. Carl Jung taught us that the patterns that rule our adult relationships are often invisible threads stitched into our childhood. If you learned early on that love was conditional, something you had to earn, fight for, or beg for, then that blueprint didn't vanish when you grew up. It just went underground. It became part of the way you see yourself and how you believe others will see you too. You're not chasing love. You're chasing familiarity. You are drawn to the emotional texture of your oldest wounds, even if those wounds are suffocating you. Your unconscious mind is trying in its own desperate way to rewrite the past, to finally win the approval, affection, and safety that were once denied. But wounds don't heal by reenactment. They reopen. They deepen. And you find yourself trapped in cycles that look different on the surface but feel agonizingly the same underneath. Different faces, different names, same emptiness. Over time, you start to lose pieces of yourself you didn't even realize you were giving away. You stop speaking your truth because you're afraid of pushing them further away. You stop asking for your needs to be met because you're terrified they'll leave if you do. You shrink yourself, edit yourself, betray yourself, all in the name of keeping someone who was never really yours to keep. And your body knows. Your shoulders grow heavy, burdened with invisible sorrow. Your smile strains at the corners, a performance you barely believe. Your eyes dart across every room, searching for someone who might finally choose you, even though you no longer know what it would mean to be chosen in a way that doesn't hurt. If you stay asleep to this pattern, the consequences are brutal. You waste years of your life trying to win people who were never meant to be won. You convince yourself that love must always come with anxiety, with tension, with a constant undercurrent of fear. You call it passion. You call it chemistry. You call it fate. But it's none of those things. It's the echo of abandonment. It's the haunting melody of a wound you haven't yet tended to. And the scariest part? You start believing that this is all you're worthy of. That healthy love must be boring. That mutual respect must mean settling. That peaceful affection must somehow be fake. The real reason you can't let go isn't because they were the one. It's because they activated something inside you that had been screaming for attention your entire life. Not the part of you that dreams, but the part of you that aches. The part of you still waiting for the love that never came. Jung's work reminds us, healing doesn't happen by finding someone new. Healing happens when you finally stop outsourcing your self-worth to people who cannot even carry their own. Healing happens when you turn inward, not outward, when you learn to sit with the parts of yourself you once thought were unworthy. When you realize that love isn't something you have to earn by being perfect. It's something you deserve, simply because you exist. And yes, it's painful. Because the moment you start waking up to this truth, you also start grieving all the time you spent betraying yourself. You grieve the years you spent shrinking to fit someone else's idea of enough. You grieve the version of yourself that thought survival was the same as love. But here's the beauty buried inside the grief. Grief is proof that you are ready to live differently, that you are no longer willing to confuse suffering with devotion, that you are finally brave enough to love yourself the way you always deserved to be loved. And when you make this shift, even if it's messy, even if it's terrifying, everything around you begins to change. Because you no longer vibrate at the frequency of desperation. You no longer radiate the energy of, choose me so I can feel whole. You begin to carry a different energy, one that says, I am whole already. And the people who once preyed on your wounds can no longer find a home inside your heart. Healing doesn't look like winning them back. Healing looks like losing your appetite for people who make you doubt your own worth. Healing looks like standing in front of a mirror, seeing every scar, every fracture, every broken dream, and whispering, I still choose you. Because that is the love you've been searching for all along, and it was never outside of you. It was never hidden in someone else's hands. It has always lived, quietly, stubbornly, inside your own beating heart, waiting for you to come home. The mask you wear. How survival patterns become love patterns. There was a time in your life when you had to hide parts of yourself to survive. Maybe you learned to be the good child, the quiet one, the agreeable one, the peacemaker. Maybe you realized early on that anger wasn't safe, that sadness was inconvenient, that asking for too much made people leave. And so you adapted. You built a mask, a version of yourself designed not for expression, but for protection. At first, it worked. You got approval. You avoided abandonment. You earned the love that always seemed just out of reach. But that mask, as beautiful, charming, and resilient as it was, came at a price. You forgot what it felt like to be fully seen. You forgot what it meant to speak without fear. You learned to love conditionally, because you were taught that love for you was conditional. And now, as an adult, you still wear the mask. Not because you want to deceive anyone, but because somewhere inside, the child you once were is still terrified of what might happen if you take it off. You smile when you're breaking. You stay silent when your boundaries are crossed. You pretend you're fine because the risk of being too much, too needy, too real, still feels fatal. And here's the tragic irony. You are loved, but only for the mask you wear. You are chosen, but only for the role you play. And deep down, you know it. You feel the hollowness growing inside you every time someone says, I love you. And you wonder, but would you still love me if you saw all of me? Carl Jung warned us that the persona, the mask we present to the world, is necessary, but dangerous. It helps us function in society. It protects us when we're young and powerless. But if we forget it's a mask, if we confuse it for who we truly are, we lose ourselves and the relationships we build while wearing it. They are doomed to feel incomplete because no one can love the parts of you they've never even met. You end up attracting people who love your mask, your smile, your strength, your easygoing nature, but who have no idea about the chaos, the softness, the wild, untamed parts that live underneath. You stay in relationships that feel hollow because they were never built on truth, only performance. And it's exhausting. Carrying the mask every day feels like running a marathon with no finish line. You become hypervigilant, constantly scanning for signs that your real self might be leaking through. You suppress your needs, minimize your dreams, swallow your anger, numb your loneliness, until one day you wake up and realize you don't even recognize yourself anymore. And here's the most painful part. When someone loves your mask, it doesn't heal you. It deepens your loneliness. Because even in the moments when you are loved, you still feel unseen, still feel unknown, still feel utterly alone. You start questioning if true love even exists. You start believing that maybe no one is capable of really seeing you, let alone staying once they do. But the truth is, it's not that you're unlovable. It's that you've never given anyone the chance to love you fully, because you never felt safe enough to show them who you really are. The survival patterns you built to protect yourself have now become the very walls that imprison you. And no matter how beautifully you've decorated those walls, with achievements, with charm, with a curated life, they still trap the most important parts of you in silence. Healing begins the moment you dare to question the mask. The moment you realize that safety built on self-betrayal isn't safety at all. It's abandonment, by your own hands. The first cracks appear when you stop pretending you're fine, when you say, "I'm hurt," without rushing to apologize for it, when you say, "I need more," without fearing that it makes you needy or broken. When you sit across from someone and, for the first time, you allow the messy, raw, beautiful truth of who you are to rise to the surface, without editing, without hiding, without shame. At first, it feels terrifying. You will want to retreat, to patch the cracks, to polish the mask, and wear it once more. Because the mask is familiar. Because rejection feels unbearable. Because showing your real heart to someone means risking it all. But this is the moment Jung pointed to when he spoke of individuation, the process of becoming whole. You cannot become who you were meant to be while clinging to who you were forced to become. You cannot experience real love while hiding behind a curated version of yourself. Some people will leave when the mask comes off. Some will recoil from your authenticity, from your vulnerability, from your unapologetic humanity. Let them. Their leaving is not your failure. It is your liberation. Because the ones who are meant for you, the ones who are capable of real love, will not be frightened by your depth. They will not be confused by your contradictions. They will not punish you for being human. They will lean closer. They will see you, the real you, and say, "There you are. I've been looking for you." You do not need to be perfect to be loved. You do not need to be invulnerable to be safe. You do not need to hide your heart to protect it. Real love is not built on performance. It is built on presence, on truth, on the willingness to be seen and to see in return. When you drop the mask, when you dare to stand unguarded in the wildness of your own truth, you don't just find better relationships. You find your real life, the life where you are no longer surviving, you are living. And the love that meets you there, the love that sees you, all of you, and stays, is the love that doesn't just change your relationships, it changes you. The illusion of chemistry. Why trauma feels like fate. There's a certain kind of connection that feels electric. You meet someone, and it's like 1,000 unseen threads snap into place. Your heart races, your hands shake, Your mind spins with a wild, breathless certainty. This is it. This is fate. You tell yourself that real love is supposed to feel this way. Overwhelming, urgent, all-consuming. Movies, songs, and stories have all whispered the same lie into your heart. When you meet the right person, you'll just know. And yet, if you look back carefully, you'll notice a haunting pattern. The ones who sparked the most intense chemistry, the ones who felt like destiny from the very first glance, were often the ones who hurt you the most, who mirrored your deepest fears, who abandoned you in the exact ways you feared being abandoned, who validated your worst beliefs about your worth. This isn't coincidence. This is trauma, masquerading as fate. Carl Jung taught that the unconscious seeks completion, not happiness. Your mind isn't looking for the healthiest love. It's looking for familiarity. It's looking for the emotional textures you learned in childhood, because to your unconscious, familiarity feels safer than the unknown. If you grew up equating love with unpredictability, inconsistency, or emotional pain, then when you meet someone who triggers those same feelings, your body lights up like a warning siren. But instead of interpreting it as danger, you interpret it as chemistry, as fate, as love, and so you chase it. You mistake anxiety for excitement. You confuse chaos with passion. You fall into the same hollow orbit again, trying to win over the person who wounds you, thinking that if you can finally make them stay, you'll heal everything that came before them. But this pattern doesn't heal you. It re-traumatizes you. Every unanswered text, every broken promise, every moment of emotional withdrawal tears open the oldest wounds in your heart, the ones you were too young to defend yourself against. You start believing the heartbreak proves something about you, that you're unworthy, that you're broken, that you must try harder, love better, be more. And the cycle deepens. You blame yourself for not being enough to keep their attention. You make excuses for their inconsistency, their cruelty, their absence. You call it loyalty. You call it unconditional love. But in truth, it's trauma, pulling you back into the same burning house again and again, convincing you that maybe this time it won't hurt. But houses built on trauma don't heal you. They consume you. And the only way out is to question the very foundation you're standing on. The next time you feel that breathless, overwhelming surge of chemistry, pause. Ask yourself, is this person making me feel safe? Or is this person making me feel familiar pain? Because real love, the kind that heals, doesn't send your nervous system into overdrive. It doesn't make you feel like you're dangling on a hook, desperate for validation. It doesn't ignite your survival instincts. It soothes them. It quiets the chaos. It makes your soul feel like it's finally exhaling after a lifetime of holding its breath. Real love is calm. Real love is safe. Real love feels like freedom, not captivity. It invites your heart to open slowly, gently, not to shatter against a wall of unmet needs. But the truth is, if you are addicted to trauma-based chemistry, healthy love will feel boring at first. It won't make your heart race with terror disguised as excitement. It won't keep you up at night questioning your worth. It won't trigger the old survival patterns you've been mistaking for love. It will feel strange, foreign, unfamiliar, and your mind will resist it. Because trauma wires us to crave what hurt us. Because healing requires rewiring what we think we deserve. Carl Jung believed that what remains unconscious will continue to control our lives until we bring it into awareness. If you don't face these patterns, you will spend your life chasing emotional earthquakes, calling the aftershocks destiny, and wondering why love always leaves you broken. But when you finally stop running toward what wounds you, when you pause long enough to feel the discomfort of something different, something softer, something safer, you begin the slow, sacred work of rewriting your inner blueprint. You teach your heart that love doesn't have to hurt to be real. You teach your nervous system that safety is not boring. It's beautiful. You teach yourself that you are worthy of affection that is consistent, steady, and true. And when you do, you will stop mistaking fireworks for foundations. You will stop trading your peace for passion that burns you alive. You will stop calling trauma chemistry soulmates. Instead, you will recognize real connection, not by how it sets your heart racing, but by how it helps your soul finally rest. And that is the love you have been longing for, not the one that sweeps you off your feet only to abandon you in the wreckage, but the one that stands steady when the storms come, the one that holds space for your healing, the one that never requires you to bleed in order to be seen. Real love doesn't demand your suffering. It welcomes your wholeness. And the day you learn to tell the difference is the day you stop falling for illusions and start rising into the kind of life, the kind of love that was always meant to be yours. The silent sabotage, how fear of being alone destroys true love. There's a fear most people carry but rarely speak aloud. The fear that if they stop chasing, if they stop settling, they will end up alone. Utterly, achingly alone. It's the kind of fear that sits quietly in the background, whispering when you hesitate, pressuring you to say yes when every cell in your body screams no. It's the fear that convinces you to hold on to relationships that drain your soul, to apologize when you weren't wrong, to stay silent when you should have spoken, to lower your standards again and again until one day you wake up and barely recognize the life you're living. You don't choose from love, you choose from fear. Carl Jung warned that what we repress doesn't disappear. It simply drives our choices from the shadows. The fear of being alone is one of the most powerful unconscious forces in the human psyche, and if you don't confront it, it will sabotage every chance at real love you ever have. Because when fear chooses for you, you don't ask, is this person aligned with my soul? You ask, will this person stay? You don't prioritize mutual respect. You prioritize avoidance of abandonment. You don't seek partners who nourish your growth. You settle for anyone who soothes your loneliness, even temporarily. And here's the silent tragedy of it all. When you choose from fear, you guarantee the very outcome you are desperate to avoid: loneliness. Because there is no loneliness deeper than lying next to someone and feeling unseen. No loneliness harsher than living a life built on silent self-betrayal. You can be surrounded by people and still starve for connection. You can wear a ring on your finger and still ache for someone who truly understands your heart. You can fill your calendar with dates and parties and conversations and still feel like a ghost inside your own life, because true connection, the kind your soul craves, cannot grow in soil poisoned by fear. Fear creates relationships of control, of manipulation, of silent resentment. Fear convinces you that crumbs are a feast. Fear convinces you that attention is the same thing as love. Fear teaches you to chase validation like a thirsty traveler, chasing mirages across an endless desert. And every time you listen to fear, every time you settle, every time you ignore the aching truth rising inside your chest, you drift further from yourself. You forget that solitude is not a punishment. It is a sacred space, a rebuilding ground, a proving ground. Solitude is where you meet yourself without the noise of other people's expectations. It's where you learn to soothe your own heart. It's where you remember that your worth was never meant to be measured by anyone else's ability to stay. If you cannot sit with your own soul in silence, you will never be able to sit fully with another. You will grasp, you will cling, you will demand from them the peace you refuse to cultivate within yourself. But when you make peace with solitude, when you learn to find fullness in your own company, everything changes. You no longer tolerate relationships that offer presence without intimacy. You no longer trade your integrity for temporary companionship. You no longer accept being half-loved, because you know now, it is better to walk alone in truth than to sleep beside someone in a bed of lies. It is better to sit with the honest ache of solitude than to drown in the silent agony of feeling invisible inside a relationship. This kind of self-trust cannot be faked. It is forged in the quiet hours, in the empty rooms, in the moments when the loneliness rises up, and instead of running from it, you stay. You breathe. You say to yourself, I am here. I am enough. I will not abandon myself. And little by little, the terror softens. The desperate grasping loosens. The frantic hunger for someone, anyone, to complete you fades into something more powerful. A steady knowing, a solid peace, a radiant fullness that no one can give you, and no one can take away. When you reach this place, love is no longer something you beg for. It is something you allow. It is something you recognize, not by how it fills a void, but by how it expands a life that is already whole. You are no longer a half-built home, searching for someone else to complete the construction. You are the house, fully built, fully lit from within, and love becomes the open window, the warm sunlight pouring in, not the scaffolding holding you upright. Carl Jung knew that the journey inward is the only journey that frees us from the tyranny of unconscious fear. And until you make peace with standing alone, you will never be able to truly stand beside someone else. The world will keep offering you people who match your frequency. If you vibrate with fear, you will attract fear-based connections. People who need you to stay small so they don't have to grow. People who love your wounds, but not your healing. People who are not building with you, but building against their own loneliness, just like you once did. But when your energy shifts, when you move from fear to love, from scarcity to abundance, something extraordinary happens. The right people find you, not because you chased them, not because you begged them, but because your soul finally shines clear enough for them to see. And those connections, the ones born from truth, not terror, they don't feel like a lifeboat rescuing a drowning person. They feel like two strong swimmers meeting in the middle of the ocean, choosing to swim together, not out of need, but out of joy. You deserve that kind of love. But first, you must stop sabotaging yourself in the silence. You must make peace with the loneliness you fear so much, because it was never your enemy. It was your initiation. The mirror effect, how people reflect your unhealed wounds. Every person who enters your life brings a mirror. Some reflect your beauty, some reflect your strength, but many, the ones who leave the deepest marks, reflect your wounds. It's easy to think the world is random, that betrayal, abandonment, heartbreak are just accidents of living. But Carl Jung taught us otherwise. He believed that the people we attract are not chosen by luck. They are summoned by the unconscious parts of ourselves, still waiting to be healed. When you are still carrying the belief that you are not enough, you will find yourself drawn to those who confirm it. When you still fear abandonment, you will unconsciously gravitate toward those who are unable to stay. When you have buried anger, shame, or grief, you will attract people who stir those emotions back to life, not because you deserve to suffer, but because your soul is aching to wake up. Because the universe, in its strange wisdom, knows that pain will get your attention when comfort will not. The ones who hurt you are not just villains in your story. They are messengers. They are mirrors. They are catalysts for your awakening. But most people miss the message. They get stuck in blame. They point outward. They betrayed me. They hurt me. They abandoned me. And while all of that may be true, it misses the deeper truth. What inside of me was willing to stay in that dynamic? What wound needed their presence to finally surface? Until you ask those questions, you will keep repeating the cycle. Different faces, same lessons. The universe doesn't give up on you. It will keep sending mirrors until you finally look beyond the surface and see what's being reflected. Think about the last time someone broke you open. Not just annoyed you, not just inconvenienced you, but truly shattered something inside you. Now ask yourself, What old fear did they trigger? What forgotten belief about your worth did they confirm? What ancient ache did they touch with surgical precision? When you begin to see it, it's almost unbearable, because you realize that all along, you were not just reacting to them. You were reacting to everything inside you that still hurt. You realize that your anger wasn't just about the present betrayal. It was about all the betrayals you never got to grieve. You realize that your heartbreak wasn't just about them leaving. It was about all the times you felt invisible as a child, all the nights you cried quietly into your pillow, all the moments you learned to swallow your own needs just to survive. The pain feels bigger than the moment because it is bigger than the moment. It is the accumulation of a lifetime of silent wounds. And so many people, when they reach this realization, collapse into despair. They say, "How can I ever heal something that started so long ago?" They believe they are broken beyond repair. They believe they are doomed to a life of half-love and hollow connections. But Jung would say, this is not the end. This is the beginning. Because the moment you see the pattern, you are no longer fully trapped inside it. Because the moment you understand the mirror, you can choose differently. You can stop chasing those who cannot love you. You can stop abandoning yourself to win approval. You can stop believing that love must hurt to be real. Healing begins not when you find the perfect partner, but when you become the person who no longer tolerates being reflected through the lens of old wounds. You start choosing differently, not from fear, not from desperation, but from truth, from self-love. You recognize manipulation not as a challenge to conquer, but as a warning to heed. You recognize inconsistency not as a mystery to solve, but as a boundary to honor. You recognize emotional unavailability not as an invitation to prove your worth, but as a clear sign to walk away. Because now you know. What you allow is what you teach the world to mirror back to you. When you treat yourself with honor, the world responds in kind. When you set standards rooted in self-respect, you magnetize people who are capable of meeting them. And it's not magic. It's not coincidence. It's alignment. Energy meets energy. Truth calls to truth. Wholeness recognizes wholeness. But even as you grow, there will still be tests. The universe, in its infinite wisdom, will send you familiar faces in new disguises, not to punish you, not to mock you, but to ask you, have you really learned? Will you choose yourself this time? And sometimes you will stumble. You will be tempted to return to old patterns, because comfort, even painful comfort, can be seductive. But the more you choose yourself, the easier it becomes. The quieter the pull of the past, the stronger the song of your own soul. Carl Jung called it individuation, the slow, sacred process of becoming who you truly are, unburdened by the projections of others, unshackled from the wounds of the past. Individuation demands that you stop blaming the mirrors and start tending to the reflection. It demands that you meet your own gaze with compassion instead of shame. It demands that you take radical responsibility for your healing, not because you caused the wounds, but because you are the only one who can choose to heal them. And when you do, something extraordinary happens. You no longer see betrayal as evidence that you are unworthy. You no longer see rejection as proof that you are unlovable. You see it all, the pain, the loss, the endings, as sacred steps on the path back to yourself. You realize that healing isn't about never being hurt again. It's about no longer abandoning yourself when hurt comes. It's about holding your own heart steady when the winds of life try to tear you apart. It's about looking into the mirror, into the eyes of every person who crosses your path, and seeing not just your wounds, but your wholeness reflected back at you. Because you are not your pain. You are not your past. You are not the sum of the people who could not love you properly. You are the love you were always seeking. You are the healing you thought would come from someone else's hands. You are the mirror, clear, radiant, unbreakable, finally reflecting your own light back to yourself. The sacred art of letting go. Why releasing is the ultimate self-respect. There's a kind of strength that doesn't roar. It doesn't fight. It doesn't beg. It simply lets go. It's the kind of strength that terrifies the wounded parts of you. The parts that were taught love means holding on no matter what. The parts that equate endurance with devotion. The parts that believe that if you just love hard enough, long enough, deeply enough, it will finally be enough. But real love, the kind that honors your soul, is never born from clinging. It is born from freedom, from choice, from the willingness to release what wounds you, even when every fiber of your being aches to hold on. Carl Jung taught that nothing can change in your outer world until something shifts within. You cannot force love to stay where it doesn't belong. You cannot heal another's wounds by bleeding for them. You cannot save a connection by losing yourself inside it. Letting go is not giving up. It is not bitterness. It is not defeat. Letting go is the ultimate act of self-respect. It is the moment you choose yourself over the illusion of what could have been. It is the moment you trust that the love meant for you will never require self-betrayal to sustain. But letting go feels like dying at first. It feels like tearing your own heart out of your chest with trembling hands. It feels like betraying the very hope that once kept you alive. You grieve not just the person, but the version of yourself that believed you needed them to be whole. And grief is heavy. It comes in waves. It knocks the breath out of you at random moments. In the grocery store, at a stoplight, in the middle of a crowded room where no one knows your heart is breaking silently inside your chest. You wonder if the pain will ever end. You wonder if you made a mistake. You wonder if you should have stayed just a little longer, loved just a little harder, endured just a little more. But here's the truth you must hold on to. You were not wrong for loving. You were not foolish for hoping. You were not weak for wanting it to work. The only mistake would have been abandoning yourself to stay in a place where your soul was dying. The only failure would have been choosing silence over your own voice, emptiness over your own fullness, fear over your own freedom. Letting go is not something you do once and forget. It is 1,000 tiny choices every day. It is choosing not to stalk their social media. It is choosing not to reread old messages. It is choosing not to romanticize the good moments while erasing the pain that came with them. It is choosing, over and over, to honor the truth you already know. This was not love. This was a lesson. It's tempting to see letting go as an act of erasure, as if you must hate them to heal. But true letting go doesn't require hatred. It requires truth. It requires gratitude for what the connection taught you, and compassion for the parts of you that clung so tightly because they didn't know better yet. You can let go and still love what you had. You can let go and still wish them well. You can let go and still honor the part of you that fought so hard to keep something alive. Because letting go isn't about forgetting. It's about forgiving, not for them, but for yourself. Forgiving yourself for staying too long. Forgiving yourself for trying too hard. Forgiving yourself for believing you needed to earn love that was never truly offered. When you let go, you reclaim your power. You send a signal to your unconscious mind. I am no longer willing to suffer for love. I am no longer willing to betray myself for belonging. I am no longer willing to confuse pain with passion. And slowly, your energy changes. Your vibration rises. You no longer magnetize relationships that mirror your old wounds. You begin to attract connections that honor your healing. Connections built not on fear, but on freedom. Not on desperation, but on mutual choice. Not on scarcity, but on abundance. It doesn't happen overnight. Some days you will wake up and feel like you are drowning in loneliness. Some nights you will ache for the familiarity of what you walked away from, even when you know it was killing you. But every time you choose yourself in the silence, every time you hold the line you once begged someone else to hold for you, every time you say, "I will not betray myself again," you rewrite the story of your life. You stop being the character waiting to be rescued. You become the hero who saves herself. You stop being the abandoned child begging to be chosen. You become the fierce soul who finally chooses herself. And in doing so, you open the door for the love you were always meant to receive. The love that doesn't ask you to shrink, to suffer, to settle. The love that meets you in your fullness and says, I see you. I honor you. I choose you, not because I need to, but because I want to. Letting go is sacred because it honors both what was and what can be. It honors the journey you have traveled, every heartbreak, every misstep, every moment of growth disguised as pain. It honors the truth that healing is not about erasing the past, but about integrating it so fully that it no longer defines your future. Carl Jung once said that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Letting go is the doorway to that privilege. It is the moment you step out of the cycle of unconscious suffering and into the wide, wild, beautiful, unknown. And though it may feel like loss, it is, in truth, a beginning. The beginning of your true life. The life where love is no longer a battlefield, where your heart is no longer a hostage, where your worth is no longer up for negotiation. The life where you are finally free, the rebirth of self. How loving yourself changes everything. There comes a moment after the breaking, after the grieving, after the letting go, when something quiet begins to stir inside you. It doesn't announce itself with fanfare or fireworks. It doesn't rush in like a tidal wave to erase the pain. It starts small. A breath that feels a little easier. A morning where the ache isn't the first thing you feel. A laugh, genuine, unexpected, that reminds you what it feels like to be alive. This is the moment of rebirth. The moment when you realize that you are no longer living for someone else's love, someone else's approval, someone else's permission to exist fully. You are living for yourself. Carl Jung called this the process of individuation, the sacred unfolding of the true self, the integration of every shadow, every fracture, every forgotten dream. And it changes everything when you love yourself, truly, deeply, fiercely. You stop asking the world to fill the spaces inside you. You stop searching for someone to complete you because you realize you were never incomplete. You stop negotiating your worth in relationships because your worth is no longer up for debate. You stop performing for acceptance because you know you are already accepted by the only person who matters, yourself. Self-love is not a slogan. It's not a spa day or a new affirmation taped to your mirror. It is a revolution. It is the radical decision to stop betraying yourself for scraps of attention. It is the daily practice of honoring your needs, respecting your limits, and choosing peace over chaos. It's in the way you walk away from conversations that diminish you. It's in the way you say no without apology. It's in the way you nurture your dreams, even when no one else believes in them yet. And as your relationship with yourself transforms, so does everything around you. You stop chasing unavailable people because you no longer mistake emotional starvation for love. You stop tolerating half-hearted efforts because you know you deserve wholehearted presence. You stop accepting connections that require you to shrink because you have fallen in love with your own fullness. Loving yourself changes your frequency, and your frequency changes your reality. People who once felt magnetic now seem empty. Places you once tolerated now feel suffocating. Dreams you once dismissed can now feel possible. You begin to attract relationships built on mutual respect, not codependency. Friendships rooted in growth, not gossip. Opportunities that align with your soul, not just your survival instincts. Because you are no longer operating from lack. You are no longer trying to earn what was always meant to be yours. You are simply allowing it, naturally, effortlessly, by being who you truly are. And here's the most beautiful part. You no longer need anyone to choose you. You have already chosen yourself. which means every love that enters your life from this point forward is a bonus, not a necessity, not a validation, but a celebration. You stop needing to control outcomes. You stop clinging to what must leave. You stop fearing endings because you trust beginnings. This is freedom, not the reckless runaway kind, but the grounded, soul-deep freedom that comes from knowing, no matter who stays or leaves, no matter what rises or falls, I am already whole. Loving yourself doesn't mean you never feel pain again. It doesn't mean life becomes a series of perfect moments. It means you face life differently. You meet pain with compassion instead of collapse. You meet rejection with curiosity instead of self-destruction. You meet uncertainty with faith instead of fear, because you know who you are, and you know that nothing, not loss, not betrayal, not failure, can take that from you. This is the real work, not the easy surface-level shifts, but the deep cellular rewiring that changes how you exist in the world. It's waking up every day and choosing yourself in 1,000 small ways. Choosing rest when your body begs for it. Choosing boundaries when your spirit feels suffocated. Choosing dreams even when fear whispers they are too big for you. Choosing joy even when grief is still stitched into the seams of your heart. It's messy. It's imperfect. It's human. But it's real. And it's yours. The journey back to yourself is not a straight line. You will stumble. You will forget. You will reach for old patterns on tired days. But you will also rise. Again and again you will rise. Because now you know the way home. Carl Jung believed that the soul's deepest longing is not for perfection, but for wholeness. Not to become someone else, but to fully become yourself. And that journey, that sacred return, starts the moment you stop waiting for someone else to hand you the love you've always carried inside your own beating heart. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not lost. You are becoming. You are remembering. You are rebirthing yourself, not into someone new, but into the truest version of who you have always been. And that is the greatest love story you will ever live. The invisible war you were never meant to fight alone. All your life, there has been a silent war inside you. A battle between the parts of you that knew you were meant for more and the parts of you that were taught to settle for less. You felt it in the hesitation before you said yes to what you didn't want. You felt it in the tightness in your chest every time you stayed silent when you should have spoken. You felt it in the loneliness that crept in even when you were surrounded by people. But you didn't know what it was. You thought maybe you were too sensitive, too dramatic, too broken. You didn't realize that what you were feeling wasn't weakness. It was wisdom. It was the voice of the self you had buried long ago. The self who remembered who you were before the world taught you to forget. Carl Jung believed that the soul never stops calling us back to ourselves, even when we ignore it, even when we betray it, even when we try to silence it with distractions, addictions, relationships that only deepen the wound. The ache you have carried was never proof that something was wrong with you. It was proof that something inside you was still alive, still fighting to be seen, still refusing to give up on the life you were meant to live. But here's the hardest truth. No one else can fight this war for you. No lover, no mentor, no friend. They can walk beside you. They can mirror your light. They can remind you of your strength when you forget. But the battle, the real battle, is fought in the silence of your own soul. It's fought in the moments when you choose to walk away from what dims your light, even when your heart is breaking. It's fought in the moments when you stand alone, shaking, but still choose not to betray yourself. It's fought in the moments when you choose to believe in your own worth, even when no one else has yet reflected it back to you. This is the sacred, invisible work. The work no one applauds. The work no one sees. The work that transforms everything. And when you finally understand this, when you finally realize that the war was never against the world, never against the people who hurt you, never even against your past. You see the truth. The only war worth fighting was always within you. The war between fear and freedom, between shame and self-acceptance, between abandonment and unconditional self-love. And when you choose love, radical, relentless love for yourself, the war ends. Not because the world becomes easier, not because pain disappears, but because you are no longer your own enemy. You are no longer standing in your own way. You are no longer giving your light away to those who cannot hold it. You realize that you were never broken. You were buried. Buried under layers of fear, of conditioning, of old stories that were never yours to carry. And now, piece by piece, choice by choice, you are uncovering the self that was always waiting for you. Beneath it all, you are not here to prove your worth. You are not here to chase what refuses to see you. You are not here to fit into spaces that shrink you. You are here to remember, to reclaim, to rise. And when you do, when you finally stand fully in your light, everything that is not aligned with your truth will fall away. Not because you forced it, but because it cannot survive in the presence of someone who has remembered who they are. The choice that changes everything. You don't need anyone's forgiveness to be free. You don't need anyone's apology to heal. You don't need a perfect ending to write a new beginning. All you need is the willingness to choose differently, starting now. You are not defined by who left or who stayed or who failed to see your worth. You are defined by the choices you make with the life still unfolding in your hands. You can keep waiting for someone to make it right, or you can make it right for yourself. You can keep clinging to old stories of betrayal and abandonment. Or you can choose to become the author of a new story, one written in the language of self-respect, self-trust, and self-love. The truth is simple, though not always easy. You cannot control who loves you. You cannot control who stays. But you can always, always choose not to abandon yourself. And in the end, that choice, the choice to stand by yourself when the world does not, that is the choice that changes everything. Today is not the end of your story. It's the place where you finally take back the pen. Continue the journey. Together. If this message spoke to something hidden inside you, know that you're not alone. There are others walking the same invisible path. Others still trapped in battles they don't yet know how to name. Share this video with someone you care about. Not to fix them, not to save them, but to remind them they are not broken. To remind them there is another way forward. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to this channel, not just for more words, but for more moments like this. Moments of remembering, of reclaiming, of rising. Because healing is not a destination, it's a journey. And the most beautiful journeys are the ones we don't have to walk alone. Welcome back to yourself, and welcome home.